July's over, which means it's time to look back at the best matches it has given us. There weren't many great shows like last month, but there were still some great matches worth the time. So, without further ado, let's check out the best from July 2018. Following this year's Superstars shakeup, Sheamus and Cesaro were barely featured on SmackDown's weekly shows, and if they were, it was usually in losing fashion. On the last SmackDown of the month, they finally showed up and picked up a much-needed win. Their match against the Usos was a fast-paced battle where both teams got a lot of offense in. There were some neat near falls during the final stretch of the match, which elevated the match to the next level. To end the match, the heels outsmarted the faces to take the win with an inside cradle and set up the finals of this mini-tournament. If SmackDown's tag team division can maintain this match quality, it can rebuild itself. Andrade Cien Almas has been a part of the SmackDown roster for 3 months now. In all that time, the only meaningful matches he's had were a couple of fun yet inconsequential bouts against Sin Cara. All that changed when on the SmackDown following Extreme Rules, he challenged AJ Styles. They had a really competitive match where Andrade took AJ to the limit, making him look like an actual threat to the champion. They hit various signature moves, notably Andrade, who got a really good near fall when he hit the double knee smash. In the end, AJ got the win, but Andrade was the real star after such an outstanding performance, and could feasibly become a future main eventer with this kind of booking. On the build-up to Dolph Ziggler vs Seth Rollins at Extreme Rules, Drew McIntyre had his first high-profile match since rejoining the main roster. He and Seth Rollins had a back-and-forth match where McIntyre got to showcase his offense while Seth once again delivered a high-profile performance. Ziggler's inevitable interference came at the end, distracting Rollins just enough time for McIntyre to hit the Claymore. While he didn't get the crowd to react so much to his attacks, he still looked like he belonged in the main event slot. This was a great TV main event, with some actual stakes and a well-executed reintroduction of Drew McIntyre to the more casual fans. After another successful title defense, Cedric Alexander needed a new challenger. To determine one, a fatal 4-way match took place, featuring some of 205 Live's most notable performers. The match was full of frantic action, with everyone getting moments to shine. Mustafa was in the middle of the action, getting attacked by the 3 heels at the beginning of the match. It didn't last long before it turned into an all-out battle with many entertaining spots. Gulak's clashes with Hideo and TJP were fun teases of possible encounters between these men. The man standing tall at the end was Drew Gulak, who will likely go on to have a great match against Cedric Alexander, and I wouldn't mind seeing him take the championship. Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler's matches on Raw were amazing, and represented what the Intercontinental Championship should be about. A rematch was set up for Extreme Rules, and many hoped they would have a Match of the Year contender. They didn't, but it was still a good match. While the first half disappointed, the second half was exactly what we've come to expect from these men. Big moves, counters, and many near falls mixed up with the performance intensity raised the quality of the match. While the ending fell flat and the first half didn't live up to expectations, we still got a pretty good match. Hopefully they managed to have that Match of the Year contender at SummerSlam. In order to determine a challenger to Brock Lesnar's never-ending title reign, 2 triple threats were announced for this edition of Raw. The first one was a really enjoyable TV match filled with numerous near falls for all 3 men. they had a couple of great spots involving all participants, and everyone looked good, especially Drew McIntyre, who keeps on impressing with his power moves, and even a huge dive outside the ring. The ending sequence was really entertaining and was booked really well. I wasn't a huge fan of the winner, but that didn't take anything away from a great opening contest. Extreme Rules was really flawed. Every match had some sort of issue that made it harder to enjoy. The only match on that night that didn't have any major issue was the WWE Championship match. As I mentioned on last video, both men worked a body part for most of the match duration, and they solved the damage properly. There were a couple of solid near falls that actually made me think Rusev could win this. Aiden's attempt at cheating ended up costing Rusev the victory, and worked really well setting up the beginning of the end of Rusev Day. This was Rusev's first opportunity for a world title, and he more than proved he belonged in the title picture. Hopefully, he manages to get back to title contention after SummerSlam. After beating Johnny Gargano at TakeOver Chicago, Tommaso Ciampa was next in line for an NXT Championship match. The first few minutes were somewhat slow, but after Tommaso took control, the pace picked up for the rest of the match. Tommaso's performance was on point. He excelled at being as dislikable as possible. Alistair's performance was great too. His strikes, high-flying moves, and that German suplex were amazing, as well as his selling of Ciampa's offense. Even the referee bump near the end was well executed, it being probably the most realistic one I've ever seen. Johnny Gargano indirectly giving his arch-nemesis the win was awesome, and created hype for the eventual third match between the former best friends. Buddy Murphy and Mustafa Ali have faced each other several times since the former joined the division. Ali won the first match, Murphy the second, and Hideo Itami interrupted the third one. All these matches delivered, but there was space for one last encounter. On this edition of 205 Live, these men went to war in a no disqualification match. From the get-go, there was an air of intensity that never left the match. Ali hit several high-flying moves throughout the match, but the most impressive was his Spanish fly from the barricade onto the announce table. Murphy didn't stay behind, hitting many strong-looking strikes, as well as some high-flying moves. Both men solved every attack appropriately, especially Ali, whose selling work is superb. In the end, Mustafa took the win, but after an encounter of that quality, both men should feel proud of being part of arguably the best match on 205 Live's history. Before going to number 1, here are some matches that were great too. Pretty good title defense. While not as good as Cedric's last defense, it still delivered an exciting mix of these men's styles. Great effort by NXT's Women's Division. All the participants shone, especially Candice LeRae, who is finally coming into her own after being involved with Gargano and Ciampa for so long. Solid encounter, better than their Extreme Rules match, and with the biggest sense of purpose. I wasn't a fan of the winner, neither of the 50-50 booking. This was the match we missed at the Extreme Rules, and for the most part, it delivered. The ending was a bit disappointing, but worked as part of the storyline. Fun match. There were some decent near falls, and it set up a rematch for SummerSlam, which gave it some purpose. Tyler Bate and Trent Seven were part of a memorable moment when they won the NXT Tag Team Championships at the Royal Albert Hall in front of their people. Unfortunately for them, their time on top of the division wouldn't last long. A couple of weeks later, they were scheduled to defend the belts against the Undisputed Era. The start was a chaotic and thrilling battle between both teams, until the Undisputed Era got the upper hand on Trent Seven. From this point on, both teams followed the basic tag team formula to perfection, with Trent Seven playing the babyface in peril while the heels destroyed his knee. Eventually, Tyler got the hot tag and ran wild with it, getting some fantastic near falls in the process. However, it wasn't enough to beat Roderick and Kyle, who once again had Trent trapped in a submission hold. After much begging from Trent, Tyler threw in the towel, giving the titles back to the Undisputed Era. These kind of endings are rare, but when performed properly, are extremely effective. Overall, that was an exceptional encounter, with amazing character work, and easily July's best match. That's all for now. See you next time. Thanks for watching.